You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to the Open Door. Jim Hanink here with fellow panelists Mario Ramos-Reyes and Valerie Niemeyer. Mario and I welcome Valerie, warmly welcome her as she makes her debut on the Open Door, although she has been here before as a guest back in the day.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to learning a lot with you all.
Well, we've got nothing but learning to do, so you're in the right group. Today, we're going to advance our discussion of politics, the daunting challenges that America faces, and the dynamics and the thinking of the American Solidarity Party. Our guest is Peter Sonski, a candidate for the party's 2024 presidential nomination. Mr. Sonski, a New England native, is married and has 9 adult children. He has a Master of Science in Management, MSM, from the Catholic University of America. His professional experience is in journalism, public relations, and business administration. Peter is concluding his second term as an elected member of Connecticut's Regional School District 17 Board of Education. As always, let's begin in prayer. Come, O Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful and enkindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. O God, who has taught the hearts of the faithful by the light of the Holy Spirit, grant that by the gift of the same Spirit, we may be always truly wise and ever rejoice in his consolation. Well, Peter, you've been both a Democrat and a Republican. I guess
I've got 2 strikes against me, Jim.
I guess some call you a swing voter, but you swung over now to the American Solidarity Party doing the right thing. Do you want to talk about what led you to this group of ours, this motley crew?
Certainly. Thank you. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I would say disillusionment is probably what led me to find the American Solidarity Party. I've been unaffiliated. Admittedly, I was a Democrat from my earliest years as a voter. And I joined the Republican Party during the Reagan years. I was first, a Reagan Democrat. Some will remember what that was. And then a Reagan Republican. But I became very disillusioned shortly after. And by the mid-1990s, I had become unaffiliated and had remained so for many, many years. In the 2016 election, I was really discouraged because we had 2 candidates for president from the major parties that I could not support in any shape or form. And so I was looking for what alternative would be available in order that I could possibly cast a vote in good conscience. And I didn't find anything to be confident in, but I did ultimately cast a vote for Evan McMullin that year. I wasn't enthusiastic, but it was, in my mind, the lesser of 3 evils, if I could call it that. Anyway, I persisted. And in 2018, about the time of the midterm election, I happened upon the American Solidarity Party online. And through that connection, learned of Norm Chouinard, who is the state coordinator for the ASP in Connecticut. Made contact with Norm, and he was very kind in giving me all of the background information about our party and helping me to become solidified in it. And once I found it, it literally fit me like a glove. It was as though it was an oasis in the desert, because I felt as though everything that I found lacking, everything that I found without an ability to support in zest or in eagerness, I was able to do in the American Solidarity Party. So here I am, and I have identified with the ASP while a member of the local Board of Education, as you mentioned, and now I'm considering or asking voters in the ASP to allow me to lead the party as its presidential nominee, in hopes of growing the party both in size and in influence as we go into the 2024 election cycle.
Well, thank you for that background. Mario, would you like to take us forward a bit?
Well, you were talking about both traditional parties, and it was interesting because this morning, early morning, I was looking at some news, and I just ran into Bob Kennedy Jr. speech about his candidacy or possible candidacy for the presidency. And there was a short word said by him, which, to be honest, I identify fully. And to me was the old Democratic Party coming back, at least this very short statement made by him. Just a side comment, but it's very interesting, and I understand that you were a member of that party. Now, but my question here is that to what extent your faith inform public policy, or to what extent faith play a role in you choosing the American Solidarity Party as your political party?
Well, thank you, Mario. The American Solidarity Party is a Christian Democratic party. And the Christian Democrats are informed a great deal by Catholic social teaching. I'm a Roman Catholic myself, and have always been very sensitive to the church's exhortations to the faithful, that we need to be mindful not only of the life issues that are the contentious issues in politics these days, but looking at the life issues everywhere we encounter them, whether it's somebody that is unjustly employed, whether it is somebody that is in need of a place to sleep or a meal, or even a kind word. You know, human dignity is at a very low level of regard today. And the American Solidarity Party showed me immediately its respect for human dignity, its respect for dignity in the unborn, its respect for dignity in the prisoner awaiting a death sentence, its respect for dignity for those that are ill and dying, or that are suffering terribly and have lost all hope. But there's dignity in every human life. And so my faith informs me in a very holistic way. And this is what I've really enjoyed about the ASP, and why I said earlier that it fits me like a glove, because some of the elements that the Democrats would claim as their policies, some of the issues that the Republicans would claim as their policy, are brought together, and I can support all of these elements within the American Solidarity Party. So I feel very complete. It's not one of these cases where somebody's saying, well, I'm personally opposed, but, you know, we have to realize that all authority ultimately derives from above. And that's what Christ told Pilate, right? You'd have no authority at all if it didn't come from you, from my Father in heaven. So I see that whatever civic power we have and whatever civic power that the government justly exercises is only given to us because God created us and God entrusted us with that responsibility here. So my faith helps me to understand that we need to put people first, respect their dignity, and do so in a way that is going to create a greater respect for all facets of human life.
Thank you.
Valerie?
Yeah. So speaking of all facets of human life, one of the facets that we all have to embrace of our life is suffering. And so in Connecticut, there's been a concerted effort to legalize assisted suicide. And for some people, of course, they might see that as a work of mercy, Where have you, how have you engaged with that issue, in your state? How have you worked to affirm the good of not just life, but, the facet of suffering in our journeys as humans. So how have you worked to kind of block that effort to sort of be disposing of people as they become more of a burden, which can be one of the ways that euthanasia applies, but also maybe a distorted view of mercy?
Boy, you said that very appropriately, very accurately, Valerie. Well, first of all, let me share some good news. The bill to legalize assisted suicide in Connecticut died last week in committee. For the 11th straight year, a measure has been introduced in the Connecticut legislature to legalize assisted suicide. And for 11 consecutive years, it's gone down to defeat one way or another. So the Public Health Committee had a hearing on this, and they advanced the bill. It went to the Judiciary Committee, and the Judiciary Committee did not have the votes, thanks be to God, to move it out onto the floor of the Senate, which was a Senate measure. And for that reason, the bill died. So it's gone, at least for this year, but I fully expect they'll be back again next year, because it seems as though Connecticut is indeed a state that the supporters of assisted suicide want to have. And it's been beautiful because it's been, Valerie, a very bipartisan effort to thwart the measure. So I'm excited about that. My own activity this year, I testified against the measure when it was at public hearing, and certainly let others know and promoted the fact that we needed to work diligently both through prayer and through advocacy to stop the measure from coming through. To your point earlier, it's an effort to convince the public in general that this is a kind gesture, that this is a generous response to people who are suffering. And in truth, there are so many medical interventions, palliative medical interventions that can help people that are suffering to ease their pain. And what they most need is love. What they most need is the interaction with other human beings, to know that they have value, to know that they have meaning, that to know that their life still is purposeful. And that's what people are losing. My goodness, during the pandemic, we told everyone, go inside, close the doors, pull the covers over your head, and don't look outside. And people were left alone. People died alone. It was a terrible situation. And so it's easy for people to fall prey to that thinking. But we are human beings that are built for community. We're built for interaction. We're built for living in society. And helping people to understand that is the best way to combat measures to legalize killing, assisted suicide, I should say, to be more precise. I'm pleased that we were able to defeat it, but it's a lot of work in changing the culture, Valerie, that's going to be required before people stop bringing this measure forward.
Yeah, it reminds me of the, just the Via Dolorosa of Jesus. Our Lord, like he, as God, could have ended his suffering at any point. We're not even embarked on it, but how John and Mary were the only ones that remained with him to behold his suffering, to be with him in his suffering. And that is, the vast majority of people don't have the desire to face the horribleness of suffering, to that degree. And as people approach death, but that I think that there is something beautiful that all people can recognize about, this idea of standing at the foot of the cross and just accompanying people in those moments of anguish, and so hopefully we can, again, I don't know, hearken, have people hearken to the beauty of accompaniment. And like you said, acknowledge that there's so many other kinds of ways that we can show mercy with even just medical palliative care and whatnot. But thank you for your thoughts on that.
Can I add something else? Because your comments just prompted something. This is beneficial not just for the dying person or for the person that's suffering. It's very beneficial as well for those who accompany that person. You talked about Mary, and you talked about the Apostle John at the foot of the cross. Think about the experience that they had. It was very demanding, but at the same time, it was very grace-filled, and they, through that experience, had an opportunity at an insight and an internal growth that helped them to carry on after Christ's death. All of us face suffering of some form or another, and accompanying someone else is usually suffering with them. You're showing compassion. You're uniting with them in their suffering, and so it's beneficial too. And too often today, people want to dismiss that. They want to live their life to its fullness, to the degree of enjoyment that they can get out of it, and not be burdened by an older relative, whether it's a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, even a parent who might be seen as burdensome. So, to your point, people have lost an understanding of that respect for others, that dignity that I mentioned earlier. But they should know that walking with that individual in his or her suffering, in his or her last weeks and days, is a very fulfilling experience in itself.
Yeah, I was in DC recently visiting, and I wore my shirt. And somebody said, some guy was just walking by, and he's like, solidarity, he put the fist up, and it's like, what if we change the solidarity image to, John and Mary at the foot of the cross? I think you're right. I think the true solidarity, we need to work to change the things that we can influence, but sometimes things are very much out of our control, like death and suffering, and just being present to people and suffering with them, like you say, true compassion, I think, is the greatest good, but in those circumstances. Thank you.
A number of our listeners are probably familiar with the publication Magnificat, and the upcoming edition for May, already there practically, has picture John walking with Mary, and the title is something like John walks with his adoptive mother, Mary. So often we see the picture of them or a picture of them at the foot of the cross. This time it was John leading Mary to his home. It's really a striking image. Well, there's certainly a connection between what we've been discussing and the family. And Peter, you recently have had a listening session on the family and the needs of the family. What are some specific concrete initiatives that you would advocate for addressing family needs?
Well, Jim, thank you for citing that listening session. And I'd say that in addition to having a listening session, I've also just had a new grandchild. And so I'm very keenly aware of what young families are going through and what their needs are today. One of the things that I heard resoundingly from members is that more time is needed, more time to be with family. And the pressures of work are coming from two different directions. They're coming internally because we all feel compelled to do our duty and to support our families. And then they're coming also from the employer who is demanding our services. But family often takes a back seat as a result. Even though our motivation is to help our family through our employment, quite often our employment is responsible for taking us away. And some of the things that I heard from our members were, we need more time. We need more time, especially at the birth of a child, for mom and dad and new baby to be together. Then the system that's in place that allows people the time that they need in order to do this without the pressure of necessarily losing their job. We have systems in place, we have laws in place that provide for periods of time in most larger corporations where employees can take the time that they need. If they are in a smaller organization, they may not have that length of time that would be valuable to them, would be valuable to their youngster. If they are newly employed, for example, and don't have a length of time sufficient for their employer standards for them to benefit from some of these opportunities to take time, they're at a loss. But these are things that we need to look at and find ways that through government we can't provide for the needs of people, to take pressure off of employers, be more secure and have the time that they need. We need to make sure that they have affordable housing. That was another measure that I heard. So often, if people are moving into urban areas because urban areas generally have the most opportunity for employment, they are faced with very expensive rents. I know that just outside my door here, there's during the pandemic been a brand new building that was built, begun before the pandemic, but continued through the pandemic. And now many of these units are empty. It's a very expensive complex. And that's very, very costly for any family or anyone outside of, a successful professional these days to be able to pay that amount in monthly rent. So those are two areas that are of concern. Jim, what about just basic health care? The cost of providing for a family and their medical needs is extreme. We've been talking an awful lot about making birth free. That's an issue that I've heard countless times in the campaign. How can we help families that are faced with high copays, high deductibles, or other expenses outside of what their coverage will provide them, with making ends meet? And again, we've got to find ways in which we can support that through Medicaid and the structuring of programs that will help families to not have these burdens. After all, we talk about abortion and we look for ways to make abortion illegal, but the pressures that women face don't go away if abortion is illegal. We've got to find ways that we can relieve those pressures. And some of the biggest pressures they face are the cost of both carrying a child to term and then welfare throughout the formative years of life, and of giving people confidence that they can do that. They can, and the support is there, but the understanding of that is not always there. We need to do a better job.
Thank you. Mario, what next?
Well, you were talking about certain issues or of life, abortion and things of that nature. And also proposing some political initiative in order to address those issues. But on the other hand, it seems to me, I may be mistaken, that these issues come from outside politics. In other words, the culture is beyond reach in many ways. And this culture, let's call it, as John Paul II did, the culture of death, is the one who is proposing, quote unquote, these views. Now, the question is, to what extent politics or a political party in itself can relieve this situation? Because it seems to me that even though we may have, and we just did, the Supreme Court decision to send back the issue of abortion to the state, the reaction was the opposite. My own state, who is traditionally pro-life state, say more or less, voted against pro-life amendment and so on. In other words, there was a backlash of coming from the culture. And underneath that is the view, correct me if I'm wrong, that many Americans have about freedom. What do we mean by freedom? Freedom from what? And so euthanasia, assisted suicide, abortion, everything at the end, when you engage with people, you reach to a point that we have a different view of freedom. Now, my question again, back to this rambling, is to what extent a political party can deal with these issues?
Well, a political party can advocate ideas. A political party can advocate values. A political party can advocate policy. But laws alone are not going to bring about the changes that we're advocating for. It's a change of culture, a change in society's way of thinking. And we can help people to change their thinking with different programs and different initiatives that allow a different perspective to take hold. And so that's where we stand apart from what I'll call the major political parties, the duopoly parties. Because even though the Republican Party, I suppose, was successful in having the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court opinion overturned, I say that because with the justices that were appointed through President Trump's presidency allowed for that change to take place when a challenge was made. Even still, to your point, a ballot initiative that would be supportive of human life in the womb in a state like yours is sacred didn't pass because the party didn't have the answer to how to move forward. The objective was overturn Roe v. Wade and stop abortion. But abortion is a cultural issue, and we often look at it as a political issue. And the infighting that we have, the polemics that we have, are all because of the influence that politics have in our lives. We need to be able to set aside the political rhetoric and the political points of view to look at the root causes of some of the societal issues that we have and to see how we can approach them in a way that serves the people, and obviously doing it through political or government means, but at the same time, without the political bickering and political infighting that is so common. I know that there are many people in the Democratic Party who are advocates of human life that oppose abortion, but their party itself is very staunchly invite them to look at the ASP and look at its positions on the issue of human life and human dignity, and let them know that there is a party that supports their values, supports their views in both the life issues as well as in the social justice issues, in the advocacy for the poor, as a party. And as I said earlier in response to your question, Mario, we're a Christian Democratic Party, and all that comes to us in the way of our understanding has come to us through Catholic social teaching. It is all harmonious. There's nothing there that's in conflict. For example, I think it's hypocrisy for a legislator to say, we need to get rid of guns because they're killing students in school. And in the next breath to say, but we've got to support a woman's right to kill her baby. The life that is lost in the womb through abortion could have been that same life that was at risk in school that you are now claiming that you want to protect. I find that intellectually dishonest. And that's why I said that the ASP fits so much like a glove, because everything is holistic. Everything is complementary. There's no contradiction in the things that this party stands for. There is not a perfect political response to all of our cultural issues, but if there is a party that I think has the best starting point of all of them, it's the ASP. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Valerie.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think everybody's suffering from a lot of cognitive dissonance, and fragmentation. Not everybody, but I think that's a kind of an epidemic. And I think everybody's hungry and thirsty for an integrated vision, for a reconciliation sort of between all these fragmented values, really, that contradict each other. And so I thank you for believing in just the power of being a voice that we have as a party. And thank you for being willing to pay the costs of being that voice by pursuing what you're pursuing. I'm curious what you think about, we know you are a proponent of broad ownership, a broad ownership economy. What does that mean to you, and how do you envision helping to bring that about?
The ASP stands really for small things, for local things. And an ownership economy is one in which everyone has a role in ownership. And I don't mean just owning a piece of stock. I mean owning the elements of production. We live in America where it's the land of big industry, big commercial corporations. Look at the size of Microsoft and Google and Meta and all of the organizations, Amazon. They've grown so exponentially, and what's happened is people have become minimized all the more as a result of this corporate growth, and now they just lay off people at the blink of an eye without any thought for the consequences. If you have an ownership economy, Valerie, you have a relationship between the individual himself or herself as a contributor to the output of that particular company, whether it's manufacturing or whether it's providing some sort of goods and services. That person has a personal stake. I struggle because there's not a clear line that I see to breaking up big corporations and having the opportunity to implement some of this small ownership economy that I talk about. I'd like to find ways, first and foremost, that we could make it less desirable for big corporations to continue to merge and to acquire other organizations to constantly grow and in just a profit-seeking motive. I'd like to find incentives that we can offer so that organizations can start small, can invite people into an integral relationship as employees and co-owners, collaborative arrangements, cooperatives that allow individuals to have a real stake in the organization, to take pride in its output, to benefit from the profit that it enjoys, the success that it enjoys. And that helps an organization to sustain itself and to advance itself. Certainly, I realize that sometimes small is not efficient. It's not optimal. But at the same time, I think instances would be separated from an individual because of the need for long commutes or long hours at work are very advantageous. These are some of the human dignity issues that we were talking about earlier. They're not easy fits because of what we also have been talking about, just the cultural perception. We all accept Amazon's success, and we're quick to get online and order something from Prime, and it'll be here in 2 days, and we'll be much happier because we've got our new package that's come from Amazon. But the reality is the poor people that are working in delivering those packages and assembling those packages in warehouses are getting paid very poor wages, and their conditions are not very favorable at all. And we dismiss that. We are looking only at what satisfies us, what interests us, which is that outcome of the product. So helping people to understand that we have dignity as people, we have dignity in our employment, we contribute to our own growth, our own improvement through our employment. We contribute to the betterment of society through our employment, whatever it is we're doing. Helping culture to understand that work is not a burden, work is an opportunity, and it is a means of sustaining us, of helping us both to grow and to improve, as well as to provide for ourselves and those that we love. As I say, not a simple path, but a path that we must nonetheless try to instill in people so that they can have a new view and a better appreciation for what we bring each and every day to our workplace.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes. Now, different kind of consideration. It's almost in political life, 2024. Even Biden decided he'd finally have to announce, and he did. Now, if you're our nominee, whoever our nominee is, Mario and Valerie and I, what we're going to be doing is trying to get signatures for you or whoever our candidate is, so we can vote for you. And it would be just so great if the party had ballot access everywhere in this country. But in most places, it's going to be by way of write-in. And of course, the write-in folks need their signatures, and getting on the ballot, mega signatures. Any thoughts for us, Peter, on how to improve ballot access?
I think the struggle, Jim, and I acknowledge everything that you just said. The struggle is always going to be that the duopoly is in control. The state houses are run by either Republicans or Democrats, and they happen to like the situation exactly as it is. So they impose these thresholds that are very high for signatures or for filing requirements, what have you, in order to be able to allow a third party to have ballot access, whether it's write-in access or whether it's normal ballot access. We've got to start growing the organization, growing the party at the local level, and organically let it filter up so that perhaps we can get to a point where at some time we can work to ease these demands. There needs to be legitimate requirements. I'm not suggesting that it should be just a matter of filling out a form and getting ballot access. There should be a required substantiation of voter support for your cause. But at the same time, until we are able to wrest that ironclad control from either the Republicans or the Democrats in the state houses, I don't see an easing. They are going to continue to make it a challenge for people to compete with them.
Well, you often hear the expression, it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. And
The Christophers.
Actually, I'm in favor of doing both. And I could say, let's take a 2-minute break to curse the darkness. but we can do better. We can continue to light some candles. Mario, what next?
Well, in your effort to grow a party like the American Solidarity Party, how can you reconcile or avoid, let's say, academic flight or fancy and the dumbing down of contemporary political discourse?
Boy, I don't have to worry about that much in the American Solidarity Party. First of all, I think people are coming here who are very thoughtful, who are typically very well educated, and who are extremely committed in their political ambitions. And you know what else is fascinating is that the ASP has a very unique amalgamation of members. They're attracted both from the right and the left, typically, more of the center right and center left, but at the same time, coming from potentially different backgrounds like I did, in an effort to try to find a place that they can accomplish what it is they truly want to accomplish without having to forfeit something else. And that's the case, I think, of so many voters on the Democratic side or on the Republican side, is that they can identify with certain issues and they have to hold their nose and deal with other issues that their party puts forward that they don't prefer to support, but realize that to them, at least, it's the best option. I don't worry about some of the things that you cite, Mario, because the people that I have encountered in the ASP have the same points of view as I do. And as I say, they're both very thoughtful and very committed. And I think the fact that there is a little bit of that tension that results from some being a little bit on the right side of the aisle and others on a little bit on the left side of the aisle, is helpful, because it causes a real honest dialogue. And the people in the ASP are good listeners and open to points of view that are contrary to their own.
So, Peter, you said that you identified with yourself publicly as an official, an elected official, with the American Solidarity Party. So you've been engaging with people outside the party who may not have the kind of thought, they not be in tune to the kind of the currents of thought that people in the party are. And one of the major concerns or criticisms we've had in the party through the years is that we are too academic, we're too kind of abstract or academic in our discourse. How have you seen that play out with the more general population in your area, between yourself and them?
Valerie? Sure, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no.
I think that most people are dubious when
Maybe turn off your video. You're getting
introduced to them the party and its positions, because it doesn't make.
Yeah, and if you could go back, and you said you found that most people, because it was kind of hard to understand that bit.
I'm sorry, Valerie. I'm trying to. There we go. Okay. So I find that most people have difficulty in appreciating the nature of the party's positions, because they are not. They're not following the pattern of the two traditional parties, and so they're dubious. They're cautious at first, but when I explain to them how all of these things are so closely supportive of one another, like the life issues, it begins to gradually take effect. It's slow, but the realization is there. It's almost as though people have to be attracted to the ASP through their own curiosity. I find quite often when you're trying to reach out to people and giving them something that is so foreign to what their experience has been, that they're much more cautious, they're much more apprehensive. But when they discover it on their own, as I did, and then seek to learn more about it, it happens with some enthusiasm. So I don't know that that's a perfect answer to your question. I think that you have to persevere in helping people to fully appreciate the party's existence and its posture, but at the same time, allow them to come to an acceptance a bit more on their own than through complete persuasion.
Peter, we've got time for one last question. You've noted that St. John Paul II has had a strong influence on your political vision. Could you give us some particulars there?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Well, John Paul II was the Pope during much of my adult lifetime, Jim. And he was, as many probably know, a philosopher in as much as he was a churchman and ultimately a pontiff. He was a big proponent of the philosophy of personalism. And I studied philosophy in college at CUA, Catholic University of America. And personalism is that strong belief that I've been talking about throughout our conversation today in the value, the worth of human life, the dignity of human life. And Wojtyła saw something still more than that, and it goes a bit to what I was sharing with Mario about how humans are co-creators of themselves, if you will. We have an ability to improve ourselves, to advance ourselves, both in learning as well as in holiness and working for our own personal sanctification. So Wojtyła's view of this was really that each individual had a calling to work in cooperation with the Creator to create himself or herself, and then to contribute to the larger of God's creation. And, we as human beings have that dignity, made in the image and likeness of God, God the Father, who is Creator. So we partake, I suppose, in that nature through what Wojtyła was thinking. But this is why I feel that we are so lacking as a society in an understanding of human worth and dignity, because Wojtyła saw this in everyone, in the destitute, in the suffering, and in those impoverished, and those who are not receiving justice in society. And he had a great appeal, especially to people who were on the margins. He was a tremendous inspiration to me, and I'm so glad that he's now ranked among the saints, because he's an example that I feel we need for our times.
And what a champion of solidarity.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. Overturned such strife and communistic hardship in his own country, and then later in the Soviet Union. Yes.
May I say something that can help, I think, many members of the American Solidarity Party. John Paul II was very close to a priest, Polish priest, Joseph Tischner. He wrote a book whose title was or is Ethic of Solidarity. And there was a small book that he followed carefully. And I believe I do have the edition 1987. But if a member of the Solidarity Party can get that book, it's very, very good. It's inspirational and give all the account of those years. And of course, based on the Catholic social teaching.
Thank you for that recommendation. We close, as always, with the gospel for the day. This from John. Jesus said to the crowds, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never hunger, and whoever believes in me will never thirst. But I told you that although you have seen me, you do not believe. Everything that the Father gives me will come to me, and I will not reject anyone who comes to me, because I came down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of the one who sent me. And this is the will of the one who sent me, that I should not lose anything of what he gave me, but that I should raise it on the last day. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him may have eternal life, and I shall raise him on the last day. Come, Lord Jesus, come. Thank you so much, everyone. You will see behind Mario to his right a picture of Jacques Maritain, Dorothy Day, Peter Morin, Raisa Maritain, and Raisa's sister, Vera. And I am very fortunate because I'm just about to walk out the door to the annual Maritain Jamboree.
Wow.
This time in the unlikely site of Dallas, Texas. So maybe I'll have something to report on that next time around. And thank you so much. And you'll get the finished product from Sebastian Mahfoud, our intrepid producer, in a day or two. And please get that up on your websites. And Mario, maybe you could get it up on our Facebook page since I won't be here.
Okay.
Godspeed to all. Take care.
Thank you.
God bless.
Have a good
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.